Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Voice Breakdown, the show where we teach you how to imitate some of the most iconic voices. Well folks, it's time for a Pokemon series. We get a lot of requests here at Voice Breakdown, and Pokemon voices have been at the top of that list. Since we are doing a Pokemon series, I feel like this intro sequence is necessary.
I wanna be a voice impressionist like no one ever was. To learn voices is my test, to teach them is my cause. To analyze each impression, who will be our guide? The amazing larynx and the vocal cords inside. Any voice you wish, you can even learn cover. Oh, you can do it if you learn 6 components. Where we teach you any voice you want us to. Brendan Houdek's teaching you voice breakdown. The YouTube show. Voice breakdown.
Nailed it. There are obviously hundreds of Pokemon to choose from, so we decided we would just do some of the favorites. One of the best things about learning a Pokemon voice is that they only say one word, their name. This can make things both easy and difficult at the same time. One of the hardest parts about learning a voice is that you often can get it when saying certain catchphrases, but then when trying to actually speak other words with the voice, it becomes a challenge. That's not a problem when doing Pokemon voices, since you just have to say their name. It is easy to get right into the vocal coordinations you need to do. The challenging part is you have to rely a lot on prosody or inflection to really express what they are trying to communicate. It's a fun challenge for sure, though. Whose voice will we be doing today?
Who's that Pokémon? It's Squirtle!
Squirtle.
Let's break this voice down. Component number 1, the vocal cords. The vocal cords are going to have a neutral length and therefore neutral pitch. Of course, neutral is different for everyone, but his pitch is not too low and not too high. We want to compress his vocal cords, as his voice definitely has a squeezed sound to it. In addition, Squirtle's voice has a type of vocal fry. But it is different than vocal fry often sounds. Vocal fry refers to that popping, crackling sound, but instead of having a loose vocal fry, Squirtle has a very tight vocal fry. If you listen when he is talking, you can hear that vocal fry.
Squirtle.
Component number 2, the larynx. The larynx for Squirtle is going to be very high. We want a really bright and squeezed sound, which is largely accomplished by larynx height. It can sometimes be a challenge to raise the larynx. If you are having a hard time, check out our component focus number 2 video for some tips on that. We raise our larynx when we swallow. We want to see if we can keep that larynx raised, like during a swallow while doing this voice. We also want to utilize something known as twang. This is a narrowing of structures known as the aryepiglottic folds, and this gives us an even more squeezed sound. Listen as I transition from simply a raised larynx to a raised larynx with twang. You can practice twang by trying certain voices like a nerdy voice.
Can I take you to the dance?
Between the vocal cord compression we discussed for component number 1, the raised larynx, and the twang, you will be all set to have that Squirtle squeeze. Sometimes he'll squeeze this twang a little bit more and get a tiny bit of distortion.
Squirtle.
Component number 3, the tongue. The tongue is not too important of a component for this voice, but we do want to make sure to raise the back of the tongue and push it forward just a bit to aid in the brightness. Also, since he only says his name, and his name has the sound, the tongue will often be in that position. The can cause the front of the tongue to retract a bit, and this can also alter the resonance of the voice. Component number 4, soft palate. This component might be a bit unexpected, but we actually want to raise the soft palate for this voice. Typically, raising the soft palate blocks sound from going into the nose and encourages mouth resonance. Mouth resonance is often not as bright as nose resonance. Still, since we already have the tight vocal fry, the raised larynx, the twang, and the raise and push forward back of tongue, we have plenty of brightness. You can tell that I'm not having any nasal resonance for this voice, because if I hold out his voice and pinch my nose, you would hear a difference if I was, in fact, using nasal resonance. But
Squirtle, 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 Squirtle.
since there is no change or stopping of the sound, I can't be using nasal resonance. Component number 5, articulation. Squirtle only says as many sounds as are in his name, and he says them pretty well. The only sound that can sometimes sound a bit distorted is the L sound at the end of his name. There is a process known as vowelization, where liquid sounds, which are L and R, can sound a bit like vowels. Little children often do this, making words like little sound like lido, and tiger sound like taigo. Depending on the moment, sometimes Squirtle's L sounds are perfectly enunciated,
Squirtle, Squirtle,
and other times they can sound a bit like an O.
Squirtle, Squirtle.
Component number 6, prosody. Prosody for these Pokemon voices is going to be something for you to experiment with. Certain characters' personalities will definitely play a factor. For Squirtle, he tends to be bubbly and playful. But obviously, different situations the character is in are going to affect this. A fun way to experiment with this, for all Pokemon voices, is to see if you can read something out loud or plan something you want to say, and see if you can speak replacing each word with the Pokemon's name. This is a challenge. Sometimes Pokemon, Squirtle included, will only say part of their name. So for Squirtle, you can say Squirtle or just Squirt.
Squirtle, Squirt, 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 Squirtle.
Let's recap. Component number 1, the vocal cords. We want to have a neutral pitch and a tight vocal fry. Component number 2, the larynx. We want to raise the larynx. Component number 3, the tongue. The tongue should be raised in the back as well as retracted in the front and the back. Component number 4, the soft palate. We want to raise the soft palate. Component number 5, articulation. We want the articulation to be normal with slight vowelization. And component number 6, prosody. We want to make his personality bubbly and playful. Let's have Squirtle close us out.
Squirtle, 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 Squirt, Squirtle. Squirtle, 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 Squirtle. Squirtle, 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 Squirt, Squirtle. Squirtle, Squirtle, Squirt, Squirtle, Squirt, Squirtle. Squirtle, 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 Squirt, Squirtle. Squirtle, Squirtle. Squirtle, Squirtle, Squirtle.